My mother kicked me out at 12 because of my stepsister's lies. Years later, she sued me for money. But I had cameras that exposed everything and destroyed them legally. I'm 20 years old. I work as a freelance designer and programmer. And honestly, I need to tell this story because there are still days when I can't believe everything that happened. You know, when you're 12 years old and they kick you out of your own house, that marks you for life. And what came after? I mean, all the drama with my biological family trying to get money from me years later is something that literally seems like it's from a bad movie. But anyway, I guess I should start from the beginning, when everything was still normal and my life wasn't a complete disaster. My dad died when I was 10 years old. Massive heart attack, out of nowhere, on a random Tuesday while he was at work. That man was my hero. You know? He was the kind of dad who played video games with me until 2 inches the morning on weekends, who took me fishing even though neither of us really knew what we were doing, who let me help him with projects in the garage even when I was probably just getting in the way. I remember perfectly the day he died because my mom came to pick me up from school with red, swollen eyes, and I already knew something horrible had happened before she said a single word. The next few months are kind of blurry in my memory, like fragments of memories of people coming to the house with food, of my mom crying in her room, of waking up at night thinking I heard my dad coming home from work. It was horrible, basically, but I thought eventually things would get better, that my mom and I would manage together. How wrong I was. Not even a year passed. I think it was like 10 months or something, when my mom started dating Brian. Brian was this guy she met at her work. He sold some insurance or real estate thing. I never quite figured it out because honestly, I never cared. What I do remember perfectly is the first time I met him. He came to dinner at the house and brought his daughter Hannah, who was a year older than me. My mom was all nervous and excited, like I want this to go well. And I tried to be polite because I knew she needed to be happy after everything, with my dad. But from the first moment, something felt weird about Brian. He was too friendly, too interested in acting like we were best friends, and I could see it was all for show, you know what I mean? And Hannah, well, Hannah, from the start, looked at me like I was trash on her shoes. Literally, she didn't even try to hide her contempt. Things moved ridiculously fast after that. Like, in less than 3 months, Brian and my mom were already engaged, and shortly after they got married in a small ceremony that I basically didn't attend because I felt like an accessory in my own family. And then came the part where everything really started to go to hell. Brian and Hannah moved into our house, the house where I had grown up with my dad, where all my memories were. And suddenly everything changed completely. My room, the one that had been mine my whole life, suddenly was for Hannah because she needed the bigger space, or so they said. They moved me to the guest room, which was basically half the size and didn't even have a decent closet. My stuff, my video games, my comic collections, all of that was redistributed because we needed to share and be a family, according to Brian. And my mom said nothing, absolutely nothing. She just nodded to everything, Brian suggested, as if he were the owner of the house and we were the guests. Living with Hannah was a daily nightmare. That girl, because that's what she was, a manipulative and evil girl, did everything possible to make my life impossible. She would take my things without permission, break them or hide them, and when I complained, she would cry and say I was accusing her unfairly. And Brian always believed her. I could have evidence, like my PlayStation controller, literally in her backpack, and still Brian would say that she probably grabbed it by accident or that I was exaggerating. My mom, for her part, only said things like, "You have to be more understanding, Jackson. They're adjusting to a new life. Give Hannah time." But time only made Hannah worse, more calculating, more sadistic in her little daily tortures. The moment that changed everything happened when I was 12 years old, almost 13. I was in 7th grade. Hannah was in 8th, a year ahead, and that year we had the same math teacher because I was in an advanced class. Turns out that one day before an important exam, the test sheets disappeared from the teacher's desk. They simply vanished. The next day, they found copies of those sheets in my locker. Not only that, Hannah said she had seen me taking them from the classroom the day before, and supposedly another girl also saw me, although I later found out that girl was Hannah's friend and basically lied for her. The school made a whole drama out of it, They called my mom and Brian. There were meetings with the principal, with the teacher, with the counselor. I swore to them 1,000 times that I hadn't done anything, that someone had put those sheets in my locker, that Hannah hated me and was trying to screw me over, but nobody believed me. Nobody. The evidence was there. There were witnesses, and I was the problematic kid who apparently had resentment toward his new family. They expelled me from school. A complete expulsion, not suspension. Expulsion. My record was ruined, my reputation destroyed, and the worst of all is that my mom, my own mother, looked at me with this mixture of disappointment and shame that broke my soul. I begged her to believe me. I told her that Hannah had set me up, but she just shook her head and said I needed to accept the consequences of my actions. Brian was worse. That guy was furious, yelling that I was a liar and a thief, that I was setting a bad example in the house, that they couldn't have someone like that living with them. And I stood there thinking, this is my house. I lived here first. My dad bought this house, and now this. Stranger is telling me I don't deserve to be here. One night, like 2 weeks after the expulsion, Brian came into my room, well, the guest room where I slept, and told me he had made a decision. He said I couldn't keep living there, that I was a bad influence on Hannah, that besides he had found evidence that I was stealing money from his wallet, which was an absolute and ridiculous lie, but he insisted it was true. He told me I had until the weekend to pack my things and get out. When I tried to talk to my mom, when I went to her room crying and begging her not to let this happen, she just said that Brian was right, that maybe I needed time to reflect on my actions, that I could go live with my grandpa for a while. She didn't fight for me. She didn't defend me. She did absolutely nothing. And that betrayal from my own mother, hurt 1,000 times more than everything Brian and Hannah had done. My grandpa, my dad's father, received me without asking questions. That man was my salvation, honestly. He lived alone in a small house like 40 minutes away, and when I got there with my 2 suitcases of clothes and my backpack with the little I could save from my previous life, he just hugged me and told me that was my home now, that I could stay as long as I needed. My grandpa never believed Brian or Hannah, never thought I was a thief or a liar, and that vote of confidence meant everything to me at that moment. The first few months were tough. I'm not going to lie. I changed schools, had no friends, missed my old life, missed my dad with a physical pain in my chest, and part of me kept waiting for my mom to show up and say she had made a mistake. But that never happened. What did happen is that I found a way to channel all that rage and pain into something productive. My grandpa had an old computer in his study, and I started spending hours there, teaching myself to use design programs that I downloaded for free, watching YouTube tutorials on programming, basically absorbing all the knowledge I could. I discovered I was good at it, like really good. I had an eye for design, for colors and compositions, and programming made sense to my brain in a way that school math never did. My grandpa supported me completely, bought me books when he could, encouraged me to keep learning, told me I had real talent and should take advantage of it. When I was 15, I started doing small freelance jobs. Logos for local businesses, basic web pages, that kind of thing. I charged cheap at first because I was just learning, but little by little, I improved and raised my prices. By 16, I already had regular clients, people who recommended me to others, and I was making enough money to help my grandpa with some household expenses. School was secondary to me at that point, honestly. I did the minimum necessary to pass, but my real education was in those hours in front of the computer, learning new skills, building my portfolio, establishing my reputation as a reliable designer. My mom didn't communicate with me all that time. 0 calls, 0 messages, 0 visits. It was like I had ceased to exist for her. My grandpa told me she asked about me occasionally, that he sent her photos and told her how I was doing, but she never made the effort to contact me directly. And honestly, after the first year, I stopped caring. Or that's what I told myself, though it was probably a lie, and it hurt more than I wanted to admit. Then, when I was 17, almost turning 18, my mom showed up. She knocked on my grandpa's door one Saturday afternoon, and when I opened and saw her standing there, I didn't know what to feel. She looked older, tired, with more wrinkles around her eyes. She asked me if we could talk, and I let her in more out of curiosity than anything else. She sat in the living room and started with this whole speech about how much she had missed me, how it had been difficult for her too, how she hoped we could rebuild our relationship. And I sat there waiting for a real apology, an admission that she had made a mistake by letting me go. But that never came. Instead, after like 20 minutes of superficial chat, she got to the real reason for her visit. Brian had lost his job, they were going through financial difficulties, and she knew from my grandpa that I was making good money with my design work. She wanted to know if I could help them financially, like lend them a few $1,000s to cover some debts. I stayed looking at her in complete silence for a moment because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This woman who had abandoned me, who had chosen her new husband and stepdaughter over her own son, who hadn't lifted a finger to defend me when I needed her most, was now there asking me for money. I told her no, simple and directly. I told her that she had made her choice years ago when she decided to kick me out of the house, and that now I was making mine. She started crying, told me I was being cruel, that she was still my mother and that family helps each other. And I responded, where was that family mentality when I was 12 years old and they were kicking me to the street? Where were you when I begged you to believe me? She left crying, and my grandpa, who had heard the whole conversation from the kitchen, just put his hand on my shoulder and told me I had done the right thing. Things got worse for them after that, according to what I found out from my grandpa, who stayed in contact with my mom. Brian didn't just lose his job. Apparently his little business of whatever thing also collapsed. They were in debt up to their necks. Hannah had gone to college on a scholarship but lost it after the first year for plagiarizing an important paper, and on top of that, they kicked her out of school for lying about it and making a whole drama. Karma is a bitch, as they say. They eventually lost the house, had to move to a tiny apartment in a bad area of the city. My mom sent me text messages every so often, always asking for help, always with some new emergency. Eventually, I blocked her number because receiving those messages was affecting me mentally. When I turned 18, I made the decision to move into my own apartment. My grandpa understood completely. He knew I needed my own space, my own life. I rented a small but decent studio, not too far from where my grandpa lived, so I could visit him often. My freelance business was going incredibly well by that point. I had international clients, big projects. I was charging real professional rates. I started saving money seriously, investing a little, building something stable for my future. And then my mom sued me. Yes, she legally sued me. She filed a lawsuit saying that I, as her son, had a legal obligation to provide financial support for her because she was in a situation of need. I don't know what cheap lawyer told her this could work, but apparently they tried to use some weird law about filial obligations or something like that. I had to hire my own lawyer, spend money I had saved with so much effort, go to court, all that drama. The judge basically threw the case in the trash after hearing my side of the story, finding out that she had abandoned me as a minor, that she had chosen her new husband over me. The judge literally told my mom that it was ridiculous for her to expect support from a son she had rejected and that she should feel ashamed. I left that court feeling vindicated but also emotionally exhausted from the whole process. I thought that would be the end, that they would finally leave me alone. But Hannah, that manipulative witch who had started this whole disaster years ago, decided to appear in my life again. Turns out, she had discovered my design business, had seen my website, my portfolio, my Instagram account where I posted my work, and this girl literally started stealing my designs. She would download them from my portfolio, remove my watermark, and post them on her own Instagram as if they were work she had done. She had like 2,000 followers and was trying to build a career as a graphic designer based completely on work I had done. I discovered it by chance when a potential client sent me a screenshot, asking if I was the same person who had that other account. I almost had a heart attack when I saw all my designs there with her name on them. I filed copyright claims on Instagram for each of the posts that contained my work. Instagram responded surprisingly quickly, flagged her account, removed the stolen content, basically flagged her as someone who posted content that violated copyright. Hannah went crazy, started sending me furious messages saying I was ruining her life, that I was a horrible brother, that she was just trying to get ahead. I responded to her only once, telling her that she had ruined my life when we were 12 and 13 years old, that she had destroyed my relationship with my mother, and that now she was reaping what she had sown. I blocked her after that, but Hannah wasn't ready to give up. She and her boyfriend Evan, this guy who apparently was as manipulative and lying as she was, decided to escalate things. They filed a false police report saying I was selling counterfeit designs, that I was using Hannah's work without permission. Basically flipped the whole situation around. I had to go to the police station. I had to show all my original files, my drafts, my initial sketches, creation dates, everything. Luckily, I have backups of absolutely everything in the cloud, organized meticulously by date, so I could prove beyond any doubt that I was the original creator of all those designs. The officers clearly saw it was a false and malicious report. I told them I wanted to press charges against Hannah and Evan for defamation and for making a false police report. The officer told me I had every right to do so, and that was exactly what I did. The legal situation with Hannah and Evan got serious quickly. My lawyer, the same one who had helped me with my mom's case, built a solid case showing the pattern of harassment, the lies, the attempt to damage my professional reputation. But Hannah, being the impulsive and stupid person she is, decided to commit the most obvious and dumb crime in the world. She broke the window of my design studio one night and stole several of my original designs, the physical ones I kept as part of my creative process. Frames, sketches, some paintings, things I valued not only professionally, but also personally. What this idiot didn't know is that I had security cameras everywhere in my studio. I literally recorded her breaking in, frantically searching through my things, putting them in a large bag. Her face was clearly visible on the cameras. There was no way to deny it. I called the police immediately when I saw the notifications from the cameras on my phone, sent them the videos, and basically they caught her red-handed. They arrested her that same night. Found my stolen designs in her apartment. The whole thing was ridiculously easy to prove. I recovered most of my things, but some were damaged, had shoe prints on top, tears, stains from something that looked like coffee. Things that had taken me hours to create, ruined by the tantrum of a 1-year-old girl who had never grown up emotionally. Hannah is now facing serious criminal charges. Burglary, destruction of property, violation of a restraining order that had been issued after the false police report. Brian tried to contact my grandpa, begging him to convince me to drop the charges, saying Hannah had made a mistake but didn't deserve to go to prison. My grandpa told him I was an adult who made my own decisions, and that after everything that family had done to me, they were lucky I wasn't looking for more ways to make them pay. The last I heard was that Brian himself had been arrested for fraud related to his collapsed business, something about scamming investors. Honestly, it didn't surprise me at all. Today I'm 20 years old, and my life is exactly how I wanted it to be. I work from home or from my studio. I have incredible clients who pay me very well for my work. I'm building an investment portfolio. I'm considering buying my own apartment soon. I just signed a contract with a tech company to design their entire visual identity, the biggest project of my career so far. My grandpa is proud of me, and that's the only family approval I really need or want. I've been going to therapy for like a year, working on all the trauma from my childhood, on my mom's abandonment, on my family's betrayal. It's not going to be something I overcome overnight. It'll probably be something I deal with my whole life. But I'm in a better place now than I was years ago. My mom? I haven't talked to her in over a year. I don't know where she lives, what she's doing, if she's still with Brian, or if she finally realized what kind of person he is. And the truth is, I don't care anymore. That part of my life is closed. That family stopped being my family the day they chose to believe a lying girl over me. I built my own life from scratch, without their help, without their support, and I came out better than any of them will ever be. Sometimes I think about how things would have been if my dad hadn't died, if he were still here. I know he never would have allowed any of this to happen, that he would have defended me, that he would have seen through Hannah's lies from the beginning. But I also know he would be proud of the person I became, of the man I built, despite everything they did to me. And that, at the end of the day, is what really matters.